before I open for questions, I want to talk a little bit about Quinshon's situation. I'd start by saying that anytime not just a player but a member of your organization is involved in a legal situation, and particularly one that involves allegations of domestic violence, you lose a ton of sleep over it, and you lose a ton of sleep over it not just because of the seriousness of the allegations, but also because of the amount of time and energy you spend, really vetting any person who comes into your organization, and then probably for us in the past 2 years in particular, the amount of time and resources we spent on the education part of it, with our not just with our players but with our whole organization. Our primary responsibility, our initial responsibility as an organization, is to gather as much information, particularly quality information, as possible. Rarely, even though it's a highly public incident, rarely does all the information become public or easily accessible. Which is why it's so important for us to work through the legal process, work with investigators, obviously communicate and share information with the league. But it's not until that time that we get enough information and enough quality information that we will determine or decide the next steps of what to do with that, with the player or the employee. So in terms of Quinshon specifically, we're still gathering information. Sometimes that process occurs quickly. Sometimes the information comes a little bit more slowly, but we're still in really probably the information gathering stage with him. That, and given the fact that he's still in an active legal situation, there's not much that I can comment specifically on his case at this point. But as we get to the point where we have enough information to determine the next steps, we will certainly do so. The way I would say is, I have learned in many of these off-field situations not to go too far into the future. We'll deal with the day-to-day. You end up using a lot of sort of mental energy in terms of hypotheticals and things of that nature, and rather we'll focus on gathering the information and then making the right decisions. When we talk about vetting, it's not about just flying in, talking to a position coach or talking to a support staff. Pretty extensive legal checks, pretty extensive background checks, whether that's with compliance office on campus. We actually employ a third-party company that does all of our security and background. So everything from if a guy has a speeding ticket to something more serious, that's something that's accessible to us. It is important to we have a large web of sources. It is important to know who's reliable, but to leave it at just maybe hearsay is the wrong term, but to leave it at just an interview on a campus with a coach or an academic advisor, that's not nearly enough, and we use way more resources there.
Speaking